Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, fresh off a couple of days off and feeling very excited and very refreshed and very ready to go. I hope you're all having a great time. I hope that the last couple of days, I hope that I hope you didn't miss me too much as I missed you for sure. And I hope this new sort of scheduling is working for everyone. I'm assuming it's not a big deal, but if there's anybody out there who's like, no, 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 this is crushing me. I can't live with this new schedule. Email me. Let's see if we can figure stuff out together, okay? Because, the one thing that I've learned through all of this work and through all this growth that I've gone through and again, my growth is what I base my work on, so I've been there, right? I've come through the journey myself. And in my journey, one thing that I've realized is so important with anything that we're doing is flexibility, right? And the ability to be adaptable and to be not so rigid, right? And so I apply that to every aspect of my life. So even though these 2 days are something that I need, let's talk. If there's a need that you have, let's see if we can figure out both our needs, figure out a way to satisfy both our needs, okay, without too much sacrifice. And that's what life is all about, right? That's what life is about for ourselves, just as a personal kind of way of going about the world, about our lives, right? But it's also very much in the interpersonal interpersonal relationships that we have, right? That this flexibility, this adaptability is key for it, right? For all of it, right? Whether that's an employee kind of relationship that you have, like either as an employee or as an employer, right? It goes for the parental, obviously, a spousal relationship, a collegial relationship, a salesperson client kind of relationship, all of it, right? The more flexible, the more adaptable that we can be in any aspect of our lives. Now, that doesn't mean to give up things that are important for us, right? We have to hold on to those things that are important. There are certain things that are non-negotiable, and that's okay, right? But to really be flexible where we can be flexible so that we can hold firm where we need to hold firm. Hope that makes sense to everybody. It's just something I wanted to throw out there this morning because it is really, really important, right? Just in terms of all the work that I talk about here, but just in terms of living, right? Just in terms of also just the ability to be well in the mind, right? There's when there's two sort of you know not well places that you can go in your mind. One is very chaotic, right, where nothing is just everything's all over the place, right? Or the other side is rigidity, right? So neither of these things are a healthy state of mind, right? What we want to be somewhere in between, right? We want to be where we can allow things to be a little chaotic, right? And allow things to be a little bit flexible and a little bit, in motion, and be okay with that, be comfortable with that, and also, not be too rigid about things, right? And so that's a big sort of quality of life kind of lesson for you there, and I hope that that makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, something we can certainly talk about because again, and this also applies to the practices that I talk about here, right? Just the very practice of meditation is one of of examining rigidity, right? And letting go of things that are persistent, right? So it's steeped right into the work that we do. So it's something that naturally will flow from what we're doing here. But the idea though is that if that's something that it's something to look out for. It's something to bring into our awareness and to see like areas in which, okay, yeah, I am being too rigid here. Like, or better yet, is there something I can do to be less rigid? And will that satisfy something about this situation right now, right? It's just a simple question we can ask ourselves. A lot of times with my clients, I at some point in my clients' work, basically everyone gets this sort of lesson that says, from time to time, just stop and ask yourself, is there something right now that I could be letting go of? Or is there something right now that I could be accepting? And in either case, is, can I be letting go of something that will help me in this situation, that will bring some level of comfort, some level of ease, some level of satisfaction, right? Or conversely, or likewise, I should say, can accepting something do the same for me, right? And just asking those questions, right? Just grounding ourselves into the present moment to ask the question, right? Is there something right now that I really should be letting go of? And if there is, then just let go and see what happens. And that brings us back to the curiosity, right? Like, what happens if I'm more rigid about the, or what happens if I'm less rigid about this situation, right? What happens if I do let go of that thing that I'm stuck on? What happens? Like, let me try it and see, right? And that's where we all become kind of little scientists in our lives, right? And so now here's another segue into what we're going to talk about today, right? Is that, if we're a scientist in our life, right? Like, what are scientists doing, right? They're looking for things. They're examining things, right? Examining things with an open and curious mind, right? A beginner's mind, as we talk about here in this podcast, right? But it's really about this open sort of observation, right? And so I'm inviting you now to bring an open observation into that inner voice that I talked about the other day, that I'm going to follow up on a few episodes in a row here. So I hope that's something that's going to make you going to bring you some benefit here, right? Because this inner voice that we have, right, it really does form the kind of, it's part of that programming that I talk about here on this podcast a lot, right? The inner voice is certainly a huge player in that programming, right? And so and so so but it's also something that's it becomes just like that programming, the inner voice, that inner dialogue, that inner chatter, that mental chatter that we have, right? It becomes sort of a filter through which our whole lives pass, right? In a really, really powerful way, right? Because it kind of becomes like it's almost like it becomes the language of our life, right? And really, I mean, the self-talk is nothing more than your thoughts, right? And so when we bring awareness to these things, right? And this is again something that we can say, can I let go of some of these thoughts? Can I let go of some of this inner dialogue that's coming? But it's not to say, shut up, inner dialogue, I don't want you here anymore. That would be a very, very negative thing for you to do for yourself, because the inner voice won't be shut up, right? It just won't be. It will not be quieted. But it's just like, it's just like the inner voice and your thoughts, right, are calling for your attention, right? There's something there that they feel like if they keep nagging you, somehow something's going to be helped, right? So really the sort of process and objective here becomes really paying attention to it, right? Really learning to listen to the inner thought, being aware of our thoughts, right? That being listening to the inner voice, that mental chatter, and being aware of our thoughts. Because once we bring awareness to it, once we start listening to it, well, just like a child, generally speaking, once the child gets the attention they want, they stop acting out, right? And I use the metaphor of a child for a very specific reason, because the really the sort of subject of today's talk is going to be, where does this inner voice come from, right? Where it didn't just show up one morning, right, when we woke up and all of a sudden we're talking, we're processing things in a certain way. Where did it come from, right? So now I talk a lot about the programming, right? That first 7 or 8 years of all of our development, right, where we're, our brains are being built in this, just amazing dynamic sort of construction project that's going on inside our heads. And as we're developing, right, over those first 7 years, what we're doing is we're watching, we're listening, we're absorbing all of this information, right? And it's not just watching, listening, it's also feeling, it's also smelling and tasting, it's all of it, right? We're relying on all of our senses to make sense of the world, right? We're kind of just accumulating all this information, right? And what we're doing is we're watching the way that our parents, talk to other people. We're watching how our teachers talk to other people in the classroom. We're watching how our friends talk to each other. We're watching how our parents treat animals. We're watching how our friends and families and everyone around us, right? We're watching all of this. And this is how we're building kind of our moral compass, if you will, right? We're learning that, okay, that's the way I should be speaking to other people, right? The way I hear my mom and dad speak to other people is the way I should speak to other people. Now, that is not a decision that a 6-year-old child can make, right? Or a 4 or 5 3-year-old child can make, right? So you're just taking it on faith at that age that your parents are actually treating people the way that you should treat people. Oftentimes they are not, but yet that becomes our programming. Well, the other thing that becomes, or specifically, the way that we are spoken to in those first few years of our lives, right? Age, say, 2 to 7 or 8, right? Those 5 or 6 years, those such crucial 5 or 6 years of our development, of our personality, right? However it is that our parents and other caregivers, teachers, aunts, uncles, friends, friends to a lesser degree, depending on how well you're supported at home, your friends are going to either be very prominent or not so prominent in your development. But we can talk about that in another time, or maybe you can reach out to me with that if you want to know more about that, right? But the thing that I want you to understand now, though, is that when whoever it is that you look up to as a child, right, whether that's your one of your parents or both of your parents, or also includes grandparents and aunts and uncles and all that kind of stuff, right, all that group of people, however small or big that group happens to be for you, and we're all different that way, but that how that group of people spoke to you in those first 7 or 8 years of your life, well, that has really become the mental chatter that you're living with today, okay? And that you've been living with your whole life, right? Like that's what it is, right? And so this is something for us to bring awareness to, right? Because I'll just tell you my personal story. I grew up with parents who were not very emotionally intelligent, not very sort of compassionate. There wasn't a lot of compassion in my childhood as growing up. I mean, they were very nice people. They threw around like "I love yous" all the time and stuff like that. I mean, it wasn't like I was not cared for, right? And from the outside, everybody would say, "Hey, that looks like a happy, loving family, I'm sure," but it wasn't so much, right? And in fact, my parents were very, very, very concerned with outer appearances, right? Like that was their real sort of focus was what do other people think of you, right? Like that was a big deal, right? Another big deal was, kind of, you got to make money no matter what. That was a big deal, and that was something that was, I mean, maybe not before I was 8 years old, but that's the other thing, right? Well, anyway, let me just keep finishing what I'm saying here. So my parents were very much about, and also my parents split up, right? And I was exposed to some very harsh language in between my parents, right? And I was also exposed to this weird situation of my dad just visiting on the weekends and not really being part of the family but was part of the family, and that just really obliterated my understanding of what a family really is. And this is something that literally almost tore my own family apart, because of the way that I thought it was okay to talk to, the way that I saw my father talking to my mother. I kind of developed this. And of course, it didn't just happen when I got married. This was every relationship I ever had, right? Was I felt that it was okay for me to see the woman in, I'm been heterosexual my whole life, so it's always been a woman for me, but this also applies to any relationship, right? um you know gay, bisexual, whatever, it's all applies, right? Because it's all, it's again, it's sort of transcends any of that, right? Any of those sort of categorizations, right? Because it's about how you treat someone you love, right? And so I was taught that the way to treat someone you love was not necessarily nice and was not necessarily kind. And I was taught that, that all these different things, and I don't want to go too deeply into all of it because this is not a therapy session for art here, but but the point is though that this is what created the foundation, okay, for all of my relationships, right? Because of the way that I saw my parents, relate to each other, right? But again, talking about the self-talk, right? It became like, like that is part of the self-talk, right? Like when I'm getting into a relationship, right? My my inner chatter, my mental chatter is saying like, oh, stand up for yourself, don't let the woman walk all over you, be careful, protect yourself, those kind of things, right? And what that did for a long time for me was that built up a certain wall around me, a wall around my heart, if you will, right? And so the mental chatter became something that was, a worldview in a way, right? And that worldview, of course, permeates everything. And so every relationship I has been or had been, kind of affected in the same way. So I was basically, you could really look at it this way because of the way I was talked to and because of what I saw, I actually tried to recreate that situation. And I tried to create the way, frankly, now as a father, I tried to recreate the relationship that my father had with me, which was horrible. It was a terrible relationship. I mean, it was just awful. There really was no relationship, right? And so if I bring that into my relationship now with my son, well then all I'm going to do is create the same, horrible situation. I mean, and right now, like I don't really have a relationship with my parents, and it's a very difficult thing in my life, And so again, this isn't supposed to be a therapy session for art here, but the point that I'm trying to make is that, you don't see all this, right? And no point did my father give me some sort of a piece of paper that said, hey, by the way, all this, way that I've been talking to you and the way that I've been, sort of programming you and creating this mental chatter inside your mind, well, is going to really impact you for the rest of your life. And so you might want to really examine how much you want to, change it because you can change it, right? You're not given that, right? Nobody gives you that sort of instruction, right? And so that's where awareness comes in, right? That when we can deepen our awareness and we can see how, okay, yeah, the way I'm talking to myself right now is the way my father talked to me when I was 8 years old, right? Or the way my father didn't talk to me when I was 8 years old, right? I mean, that's the thing, right? And so when we can bring this awareness, we start connecting some of those dots, right? And when we start connecting some of those dots, we can see, okay, yeah, as wherever I feel about these people in my life, whether I love them, I hate them, whatever, right? I can see that some things that happened over the course of my life have created conditions that aren't serving me, that are creating toxic relationships for me, creating toxic mental, kind of outlook, creating a toxic, absence of self-compassion for myself based on the way my parents talk to me and the way that they talk to each other. Right. I was very much growing up taught that, and again, not taught, but, came to learn through the self-talk and through the way that my parents talked to me and the way they acted around me. I was very much came to understand that that self-compassion was not something that I deserved. That it was not that's not the way to go in life. The way to go in life is to punish yourself. And all I can say for that is thank goodness for Kristen Neff, who set me straight. Who's Kristen Neff is somebody who's done an amazing amount of work on the topic of the subject of self compassion and done tons of research and has shown, unequivocally and unambiguously the benefits of practicing self compassion for ourselves. But I was brought up thinking that that was a sin, like not even just not necessary, but Who do you think you are? Was what I would hear. Who do you think you are? And so what do you think I tell myself now? When I'm going through a hard time. Now, of course not now, but say 10 years ago. What would I tell myself when I experienced a time of struggle and difficulty, right? That voice in my head would say, "Who do you think you are feeling sorry for yourself right now? Who do you think you are not letting yourself blame yourself right now for this?" Right? And so that's the inner voice, right? Who do you think you are? Well, you know what? Now I've brought the awareness to that voice, and I realized that it's been wrong this whole time. The whole time, ever since when I was a little kid, it's been wrong. And now that I see that it's wrong, now when I hear that voice, who do you think you are? Now I can answer it. And again, it's not about banishing the self talk, right? It's actually about becoming friendly with it. It's about becoming up. There you are. There's my father talking to me again, and my mother. Oh, I'm not going to listen to you now. I listened to you all those years, and oh my gosh, all that trouble I got into for that. Nope, not doing it now. I'm just moving on. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your effort. I know you didn't try to hurt me. I know you tried to do everything right, but you know, if you had to do it all over again, I would suggest taking some parenting courses. But right now, nothing we can do about the past. I forgive you. I love you. It's all good. But I'm not going to take this advice anymore because it doesn't serve me. Because I know that if I treat myself with self-compassion, then I'm going to thrive in my life. I'm not going to continue to struggle the same way I have been all these many years with this self-talk. You see how that connects? So now it's also important to recognize that, of course, we talk about the self-talk being, this programming being something that we develop in the first like 7 or 8 years of our lives, right? But now here's the thing, right? It doesn't stop. The programming, you can kind of look at it like the base programming is built between 2 and 7 years old or whatever it is, right? But it continues to be programmed, right? And it continues to be programmed in the you kind of reinforce it through your self-talk, right, as we're talking about. But then what happens, right? We all say we marry our mothers, right? Like that's the saying, right? At least men marry their mothers. I guess women marry their fathers. I don't know how that works, but I've heard that term, that men marry their mothers, right? And so what that term means, right, is that the self-talk, right, that mental chatter and that self-talk that we developed through the programming of our first 7 or 8 years, right, that self-talk is going to kind of make us seek out the people who confirm that self-talk for us, right? So for me, I'm gonna seek out people, women in my case, that are going to allow me to walk all over them the way that my father walked all over my mother, right? And they're going to allow me to put them down the way that I watched people put each other down in my whole life, right? And in fact, this is something that my wife and I've been dating, and before we were married, we were dated since 1999. So it's been 22 years now, right? And so over the course of those 22 years, we've had to do a lot of work in this area, right? So the point is that I'm trying to make is that it's if it's unexamined, right, and as happened with my wife and I, because we've been together for 22 years. I've only been practicing mindfulness for about 10 of those years. So for 12 of those years, right, there was a lot of turmoil, right? There was a lot of damage done on either side, right? Because lo and behold, my wife's inner thoughts and inner dialogue, right? She found me as someone who was going to put her down, right? Because that's what she was looking for. That's what the inner voice was telling her that she was looking for. And so it's really, really important to understand that the friends that you have, the job that you have, the spouse that you have, or the romantic interest that you have, right? The sports you play, the things you watch, all of it is driven by that inner voice. All of it. And so the more we can understand that inner voice, the more we can understand ourselves. And the more we can understand ourselves, the more we can make decisions that will surround us with people and circumstances in our lives that feed us, that nourish us, that nurture us, that create, that make us, what we really, that kind of align us with our true inner nature, right? And you can only do it through awareness, right? Or years and years and years of therapy, I suppose, is another way to go, right? Like you could talk to somebody week after week after week about this and come with some sort of cognitive understandings, right? But I'm telling you right now, if you just practice for 5 to 10 minutes a day, it's maybe a little bit of an easier road to walk. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, of course, but it's true. I mean, just doing these practices allows you to see it. And really, that's all you need to do. You just need to see it. You just need to listen to that inner voice, really hear it, and say, wait, what? Why would you say that to me? Why would we think this? That doesn't make any sense. That's the moment where you can change. And if you want some help with that change, well, then that's what I do for a living, and I'm happy to do that with you. Okay, in the description there's going to be a link for a 45-minute coaching session that is already yours. Okay, you don't have to buy it; you already own it. All you have to do is claim it, and you can claim it simply by clicking that link. All right, everybody, I wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow to talk about some more self-talk. This next week or so, we're going to get into this a lot, and we're going to really hopefully bring you some information and some insight and some guidance that's going to help you to hear your inner voice in a little bit more clarity, and in that clarity, be able to make decisions that are going to benefit you and enable you to live the life that is you, right? Not what you think the world needs to be, and that's part of the self-talk, of course, as well. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Wish you well. Take care.